Arthur Doyle exited his house while evening hours prevailed. The rays of the sun began to dissipate into the cold air, and the night, anticipated to be colder as usual, began to dawn upon the town of Mandor. Mandor was a small town, inhabited by a total of 50 families, but their unity was beyond compare. The townsfolk got together every Thursday to discuss plans and developments. The town was famous for weird incidents and strange occurrences. Arthur thought perhaps that was the reason why the outside world avoided them. No one wants to face calamities or risk exposure to the unknown dangers of the world. Everybody tries to avoid becoming a statistic of catastrophe, or so Arthur thought. Mandor had a history of strange deaths and disappearances. Sometimes people fell ill, and before they could be taken to the city hospital, they died. So Arthur thought it normal for people to avoid their town. No one, almost no stranger, ever entered their town, nor did anyone ever leave. The only way to exit Mandor was death, and that journey too was limited to the local cemetery. One was born in that town, lived, died, and was buried there. To Arthur it seemed strange that the people of the town somewhere along the way stopped leaving the town's boundaries. He remembered vividly the fairs the town committee used to hold, or the school trips Mrs. Dudley was so keen on always arranging. He remembered a time when everyone was fun and lively. He contemplated, what the hell happened? Did God forsake us? It had been a few years since the strangeness of nature had overtaken their town. That was the reason Arthur went out to try and make sense of things. His original plan was never to investigate the strangeness, for he had no reason to do so, but in his own familiarly unfamiliar thoughts, he perhaps figured out something was up. Something affected his town, and for reasons unknown, had spared him. Arthur strolled around the breezy terrain of flowing waters and felt the chilly cold air on his face and hands. He was lost in his thoughts and was reminiscent of the days, the good old days, now past. His mind went to his girlfriend Alice, who had died in her sleep. He thought, I can accept old people going to sleep and not waking up. But a 23-year-old healthy girl with no prior history of any disease just doesn't make sense. His mind wandered to a family in the neighborhood. Mrs. Darcy, he thought, used to make the best apple pie in town. Matt Darcy was his best friend, and sometimes after school, Arthur would get invited for lunch. Matt had a crush on Arthur's sister, Kathy, but was too shy to say anything. Arthur was beyond himself with grief when he found out Matt, along with his whole family, was engulfed by fire. The fire left no survivors. Kathy had an unknown illness and had been feeling down for almost a year now. One of the reasons Arthur took such late walks was to clear his head and not have to think of the suffering his sister endured on the hour. Arthur tried to take her to the hospital, but his father intervened, sending him on errands. His father took her to a hospital and brought strange green medicine, which did not help ease Kathy's pain. The illness and death surrounding the town, and its effects on Arthur alone, were evident. Everyone else seemed to have succumbed to the strangeness in the air. People simply did not react to the deaths or damages, and minded their own business, which was good but strange, considering how close the community used to be. It felt as if they had all lost their sense of humanity. Thoughts began to overtake Arthur's mind, and he tried to shake them off by singing a song as he walked the terrain. Suddenly he gazed upon the town lights, which should have been off during that time of night. However, being the son of one of the representatives, he couldn't ignore it. He decided to check it out and perhaps turn off the light, as he knew the caretaker of Town Hall would have already left. It was late, but he thought, what's a few more steps? Not a burden if it leads to doing some good. He diverted from his usual walking path, heading for the town hall. He was still lost in his thoughts, roaming around when he saw some people in black robes entering the hall. Thinking they might be thieves, he decided to hide. He took refuge behind a cart and knelt beside it. He looked around hastily and ran towards the back entrance. He knew that his father left it unlocked for emergency purposes. But no one ever used it, nor did they ever see it open. He entered the hall and started looking for something to use as a weapon. He found a cudgel and slowly crept around the corridors looking for intruders, when suddenly he heard voices originating from the town hall. He heard them arguing, so he realized it couldn't have been burglars because thieves are anything but loud. Still, he was suspicious and advanced slowly towards the hall. Every possible scenario crossed his mind with every step he took toward danger. He thought perhaps he should have sent for help, but then again, there was no time. He thought he might die, or that he might end up killing someone. He even contemplated the idea that finally some youngsters had mustered up enough courage to prank the town seniors, which made him quite happy. Of all the scenarios that crossed his mind, the one he encountered was never in his wildest dreams. There was no burglary, no thieves, but the town elders in strange robes. This wasn't the weird part. The weird part was Arthur seeing his father kneeling with the rest of the elders to a skeleton, uttering the words, Nos tibi offerimus, Sanctus, Dominus. His father uttered the words. The elders repeated chanting the words after him. Arthur could not make heads or tails of the situation, and the skeleton was weirding him out. He felt afraid of his father because he knew Latin from church and could translate what they were saying. He understood the words uttered in front of the skeleton and realized what was in progress. Satanic worship. A while had passed when the elders took to their seats and Arthur's father began the sermon. He said, We are thankful to the Lord. We thank him for the blessing the town with solitude and bounties we share. What bounties? What solitude, thought Arthur, but his thoughts were in vain. He focused on what they were saying. He hoped to make sense of it all amidst the chaos and confusion. As you all know, the time has come. The sacrifice must be worthy of the Lord, or he shall punish us. He shall smite us with his wrath. Arthur's father said the words with courage and zeal when an elder interrupted him. We shall be punished because of your family. That boy, your boy, is not affected. He thinks vile thoughts, thoughts of leaving town, thoughts of abandoning the town. He turns his back on the Lord. He is my boy and my sacrifice, yelled Mr. Doyle in retaliation. Are you questioning my commitment to the cause? I am poisoning my daughter as we speak. We shall offer our sacrifice like the rest before us. My faith remains unshaken, and my commitment is stronger still. Now, don't you worry about my boy. When the time comes, I will bring him to the table, and I will personally offer him to the Lord. Arthur looked around, and amidst the chaos and confusion, his mind started picking up the puzzle pieces and putting them together. He realized the strange occurrences weren't so strange after all. They were planned sacrifices to some evil plan concocted by a bunch of silly old men playing God. His mind went to Alice, and tears welled up in his eyes. He thought, how she must have suffered. How could I have been so clueless? How could I not see what was happening right under my nose? He wanted to run, to warn his sister, but as he turned around, he faced Mr. Sabine, who hit him in the back of his head. Arthur felt lifeless as his body hit the ground. However, he could still see everything going on around him. They tied him to a cross and carried him to his father. All Arthur could say in the end was, Kate, run!